Welcome to Different Like Me Culture with your host, Alyse November, a licensed clinical social worker for more than 21 years, who brings a brand new approach to learning by providing hands-on, interactive, web-based lessons that are easy to use and implement, and focus on some of the most important topics in today's society: bullying, dementia, special needs, relationship issues, and 55-plus communities. These 4 topics are the focus of the Different Like Me Culture program. For more information, call 561-270-2280 and begin your pro-action approach towards these major challenges in our community. Call 561-270-2280 today and get started. Now, here's your host, Alyse November.
Hi, and welcome to Different Like Me Culture. I am your host, Alyse November, and I am joined today by Howie Crooks with Elder Law Associates in Boca Raton, I learned, yes. I just want to mention, if anybody has any questions, we're going to be talking about elder planning, elder estate planning. So if anybody has any questions about that topic, give us a call at 888-565-1470. And you could also tune in and watch us on WNN 1470 AM. So, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
And let me just tell you a little bit about Howie, because he's a really fun, unique, interesting guy, very easy to talk to, very easy to work with. I know I've referred a couple of clients over to you, and I know they've all been very, very happy. The one wonderful thing about Howie, maybe not so much for your wife, but that you get to go back and forth. You have a practice in New York.
Correct.
As well as in Florida, which actually must be really great for the snowbirds, because you can handle needs in both places. So if somebody comes with documents from New York, not that a Florida elder attorney wouldn't get it, but sometimes there are certain differences in the law, I'm guessing, in both places.
Oh, yeah.
Yes?
It's a very, very deep connection, as we all know. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes I'm asked to look at documents from a Florida elder law attorney who wants to make sure that they're going to work in New York, or I'll get contacted by a family who has the connection to both New York and Florida and wants to know where are we going to be better off planning for New York or for Florida. And we'd love to be able to go to one person who knows both, not 2 separate people, because it's hard to connect the dots when you're getting sources of information from 2 different people.
It makes sense. It really does. And something else wonderful about Howie is he's immediate past president of the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. And that must be, I don't know much about the National Academy of Elder Laws, but I'm guessing it's...
Well, it's an organization of 4,500 elder law attorneys all over the country.
Wow.
And it was a great opportunity as the president of that organization to be able to help formulate and shape public policy around issues having to do with Medicaid and Medicare and veterans benefits. Very exciting and a great, great experience for me.
That sounds nice. Yeah, nice to be able to make a difference with professionals and work on different things that are working, not working in the law, right? And just trying to figure out legislatively what's working, what's not.
And in this area of the law, there's always something percolating.
Well, I'm guessing people come up with issues or things, problems that you say, okay, how are we going to manage this, or how are we going to handle it, and to take care of and protect the person. But let's get started with what we want to talk about today. So I know that I wanted to ask you about how you first came to work with seniors, because I know that's a really great and important story that you wanted to share and tell.
So when I was a very young attorney, I went out on my own after a couple of years working for another law firm. And when you do that, you tend to take whatever walks in your door so that you can pay your bills. Well, one of the cases that came through my door was an elder law case. And it involved a husband and a wife and their 2 children. Unfortunately, the husband had a diagnosis of MS, and he was in a nursing home. He had worked for Reader's Digest for many years, and he had a very, very high disability pension payment that he was able to get, which was good, except for one thing. As high as this payment was, it wasn't enough to cover what was then a $9,000 a month nursing home cost. And so his wife was working 2 jobs one as an aerobics instructor and one as a Hebrew school teacher. And she was trying to continue to raise their two children that were aged 17 and 16, just on the cusp of college, and they were looking at possibly losing their home.
Wow.
And she came to me and said, what can I do? I'm working two jobs. I'm trying to visit my husband in the nursing home, trying to raise my children. I'm trying not to get thrown out of our home, our family home that we've lived in since the kids were born. What can I do? And what we were able to do for her is bring a support proceeding that allowed her to get some of that disability pension payment that was otherwise going towards the nursing home costs. And we got that diverted over to her to allow her to continue to live in the home that they had raised their family in and not have to lose the family home and get government benefits to help facilitate the cost at the nursing home. And I just remember at the end of the hearing, when the judge rendered his decision, the entire family just came up to me and hugged me and was so grateful.
Mm-hmm.
And it just at that moment occurred to me what I wanted to do for the rest of my legal career. I wanted to work with families who had these very, very difficult issues, and with an understanding of how the legal system worked in this area, be able to help those families accomplish their objectives and feel the kind of gratification that I felt on that day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm proud to say that was over 22 years ago. And I've been doing it ever since, and I've been doing it ever since in both New York and Florida.
That's a great story. I know it's, I know I'm a therapist, and it's just such a wonderful feeling when you really make a difference in somebody's life and you help them to accomplish something that they've just been struggling with and so worried and stressed about. So I get it.
It's true. It's
very
a gift.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I feel like it's like one of those Hollywood actors when they go up to accept the Oscar or something. It's like amazing that you can do what you love and earn a living at it,
Yeah.
and command the adulation of people all over the world, and you get paid for it. And it's like that's kind of like what I feel like, because I get the gratification of learning the system, imparting that knowledge to my clients, using it to help my clients achieve their objectives, and then getting the gratification for it. And that's not everybody gets to say that.
Right, exactly. It's kind of like a gift, but it's a gift that you get to give away.
Yeah.
So every day. So you've been given a gift and you kind of give it away every day. And I really get that. And hoping most people who are working feel that way. So that's a great story, though. Okay, so you have this concept, planner versus gambler. So what is like the planner and gambler all about?
So I think people fall into two categories when we're talking about long-term care planning or disability planning. There are the planners, and these are people who understand and appreciate the possibility that they may need long-term care services and supports down the road, and they will consult somebody to help them plan for that. They'll get all their ducks in a row, and they will get all their documents executed, and they'll have a plan around how they're going to pay for long-term care needs. Then you have the gamblers, and the gamblers are not thinking about these issues in advance, but then they'll be surprised if something should happen, a tragedy should occur, and there is a need for long-term care, but they haven't set up their estate or their documents in any way to anticipate this need, and they will be scrambling. So I always ask the question, are you a planner or are you a gambler?
So is it like partially financial and planning? Because it sounds like that's what you're talking about. Is like it's a little bit of financial planning, making sure that you either have a long-term care policy, that you have money set aside in retirement to cover that should you choose not to purchase a policy. And then what do you do with it all? Or what do you do with your estate to help to take care of you for the future?
Yeah,
Is that
it does. It combines the legal and the financial. The legal documents are a way to effectuate the plan, but as part of the plan, you're going to have to address what is your approach to meeting the financial demands of long-term care. Are you going to pay privately? Do you have enough funds to pay privately? Do you need to consider long-term care insurance? Do you understand that Medicare offers very limited assistance for long-term care services and supports. Many people mistakenly believe that Medicare will cover them when it does not. Are you going to attempt to qualify for Medicaid, which is a different program? And if so, what's your strategy around all of that?
Right.
And if you do it well enough in advance, you can accomplish all of your objectives. If you don't, you might still be able to accomplish some of those objectives, but not as many as if you had planned in advance.
Yeah. So it's about taking care of you. One thing you mentioned that's interesting because I get this question a lot. So why doesn't Medicare pay for care? Because it's what we call, I guess, custodial care as opposed to a restorative or skilled type of care. So Medicare pays for somebody to come into the house to do physical therapy or different types of therapies. They'll pay for a bath aid maybe 3 times a week, which is a half an hour of a visit. They pay for a nurse to come in should you need, or sometimes medical equipment involved or part of that, different things like that. But they don't pay for, well, my wife her memory is declining and I can't leave her home alone. No, you can't access Medicare benefits for that because that's what's called custodial. And I think a lot of the times people, they ask me, well, won't my Medicare benefits cover that? And a lot of people just aren't aware. I know in New York, if we're talking New York, they cover more than a bath aid, but still it has to be skilled and it's very time limited. But here in Florida, they don't really cover anything.
No, and also be aware that even skilled care under Medicare, which is the program you qualify for when you turn 65, and it's not based upon the level of assets you have. So most people do have Medicare.
Right.
Medicare has very limited coverage even of skilled care.
Yes. I mean,
forget about custodial, but also skilled care is limited.
30 days of care. Each episode is typically 30 days in length, no more, or you have to get recertified. It's a nurse coming in for wound care or to help with, teach diabetic care or different things that may occur in your life when you come home from a hospital. And then the physical therapy also is very limited. It's 3 times a week. It's a half hour or an hour visit. And then it's also time limited, and you have to show progress. And if you're not showing progress, you're discharged because Medicare says you have to get better.
By the way, on the whole progress issue, there was a lawsuit that was brought and settled by the U.S. government, which acknowledged that under Medicare regulations as they have existed since 1965, you don't have to show progress in order to at least receive the limited coverage that Medicare offers.
Limited, but continued coverage.
Well, you're never going to get continued coverage anyway under Medicare because Medicare is only designed to cover acute care.
Right,
not
but
chronic
what
care.
I'm talking about is like recertification. So if somebody's on for 30 days or 60 days, you could get recerted if you're making really good progress and moving towards independence. So
but they're not even supposed to take into
limited.
account the progress is
They're
the point.
not, okay.
They're not supposed to take it into account. If you just need the care in order to prevent a decline, in other words, just to maintain the status quo, it's called the improvement standard. And you don't have to be improving or progressing in order to qualify for Medicare coverage. And the government, in a settlement a year ago, agreed that that never should have been the case. Now, getting it to be applied by people on the front line, that's going to take years because it's been since 1965 that they have actually been applying the so-called improvement standard.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
Really interesting. Learn new things. So, okay, so we got a little off topic with the Medicare, but I think it's important because, like I said, sometimes I don't know if you've ever run across this, but there are people who say, "Call me because I could get you Medicare coverage," and I don't know if they're scams or what.
Well, are we talking about Medicare or are we talking about Medicaid?
Well, I'm talking about Medicare, just regular Medicare. I've had a couple of patients who've come to me and said, "Well, so and so said I should call them because they could get my home care covered under Medicare." And I said, probably not. They probably want your other business, but they don't want that.
It's very unusual to have Medicare cover on an ongoing basis home care services.
Yes.
It only is supposed to cover what they call intermittent services, and like what you were talking about, 3 times a week, And even then, the authorization, is for certain stated periods of time, usually, 30, 60 days, something like that.
Right.
And then it's supposed to end. You might get recertified for yet another 30 or 60-day
Right.
period, but it's not supposed to be for
Right.
years.
It's very, very time limited.
Yeah.
Is really what it is. Okay, so getting back to the Medicaid issue, because I know that's a lot of what you do is, like, if somebody's starting to decline, you'll talk to a family, and you could probably tell more about it, but speak more intelligently than I can. But I know that sometimes people have to start planning for down the line. Well, what if something happens, and how you do that, and legally how you do it?
Sure. Well, Medicaid is a means-based program. It's really the only program out there if you don't have long-term care insurance and you don't have enough private pay funds to sustain any long-term stay in a nursing home. Medicaid is the program that most people will look to at one point or another because it does pay for custodial care in a nursing home. So as far as qualifying, there are asset limits. And you can't have more than, here in Florida, $2,000 in assets. It's a very low asset test. If you wanted to do any kind of planning that was designed to protect assets, and if you've got children or other relatives that you're trying to leave assets to, or even if you just want those assets to remain available that they could be used for your needs, even when you're on Medicaid, you would have to do that planning at least 5 years in advance. There is a 5-year look-back period for asset transfers. So that's when we talk about planner versus gambler. Are you doing your planning now when you're healthy, or are you doing it when you already have a crisis that's hit, and now you've got a 5-year look-back? And the opportunities to plan and to protect assets and qualify for Medicaid become far more diminished in a crisis scenario. There are still things that one can do, but it's much better to have done it well in advance. And we use trusts to help people in order to do their planning.
So it protects the assets.
Correct.
Then. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, I have a lot of clients that say, sorry, that, if I have the money, I'd like to utilize it for the care of my spouse. And then I ask them the big question, the $25,000 question, which is, what about you? So when all of the money is gone, how do you take care of yourself? And so they sit and they look at me. They say, I don't know. So that's when I say, you need to pick up the phone. And sometimes we do it right then and there and say, call somebody. And just, all I say is educate yourself. You don't have to do this, but you don't have to spend down. You don't have to plan or put your money someplace else or protect it. You don't have to do anything, but at least educate yourself as to what vehicles are out there that you could utilize to help yourself. Because then when you're left with nothing as the spouse, because your husband has already passed, you've already spent upwards of $100,000 on their care, and you're left with 50 or 70, and you're in your 70s, and you still have a life expectancy of another 20 years at least. How do you take care of yourself?
And that's an important question. We deal with spousal planning issues often, and in particular to address the very issue that you've just raised. If you have a spouse in a nursing home and you don't know how long that nursing home stay is going to be, it can have devastating financial consequences for this marriage and for this family. And Medicaid limits the amount of money that a community spouse, the well spouse, can keep. But there are ways that you can keep even more than what Medicaid allows. And that's what we help our spouses do for that very reason. Because the Medicaid rules they're not very realistic, of course. And they give you some measure of protection. But if you're going to live another 20 or 30 years beyond your spouse, what they allow you to have is very, very small relative to what your needs probably are going to be, and certainly the standard of living that you may have grown accustomed to. So it can be very devastating on the well spouse to have to go through the financial drain that people are confronted with when there is a nursing home admission.
Yeah, I'm guessing, yeah. So it's all about that planner gambler thing. Do we kind of figure it out ahead of time, or do we wait until it's too late?
And I find that...
And you can't do anything. Well, I'm guessing there are a couple of things you could do, but...
You can.
It's better to do it.
It's much
ahead of
better
time.
to do it. You know what it is? It's sort of like, do you want to decide how things go, or do you want circumstance to dictate how things are going to go for you and your family and your finances? I don't know about you, but for me, it would be really important to have a little bit of control. We'll have to use the control word. I'd like to have some say about how things play out down the road, even if I don't get to say if or when I have a need for long-term care services. But there are things that I can do to get the best possible outcome, and I would be one of those people that would really want to do that now and not wait.
Yeah. It makes sense.
It
really
does.
does.
But psychologically, I will tell you, and I think you'll appreciate this
Go
as a
ahead.
therapist, that the human psyche for many people just doesn't work that way. People are busy living their lives, and they're not necessarily thinking about these kinds of issues. So to motivate people to do something as a planner versus a gambler, it becomes a very difficult challenge to convince somebody that there's something that they really ought to be doing now. Even though I spend all my professional life working with people, whether they have planned or not. Either I'm helping them to plan, or I'm helping them because they failed to plan. That's my entire professional life.
Is you're helping them plan or helping them?
I'm working with planners
Figure
and
out-
gamblers.
Okay.
But I can tell you that through working with both, it's less stressful if you do it as a planner than if you do it as a gambler. I'll say that.
Yeah, because I guess it's better to do it beforehand than after. I mean, it's even about, I was speaking to your partner about just making sure that even just powers of attorney, what happens, and we were talking about the 18-year-old rule, where your child is turning 18 and do they have the papers and they're away at college and something happens and nobody could talk to you. Who is this person? I'm his mother. Well, that doesn't really much matter. We need to actually see you, and it's scary. It's scary, but people don't know. Or, like you said, okay, so what are we planning for? We're planning for when we get sick, or we're planning for our death. Okay, so if I'm a person that I prefer to be an ostrich because I want to live in cotton candy world and not really worry about what's going to happen to me. You're not a planner. You're more of a gambler. And a lot of people have difficulty, I think, talking about those subjects if they're not comfortable with death.
No question about it.
Right.
Neither one of these topics is a pleasant one. Right?
Because
Death,
you're planning
or
for
you're
sickness
planning
or
for
something.
illness.
Right.
Not
You're planning
pleasant
for when you're
things to think about.
incapacitated.
Right.
Which is really, really hard. And then you have to, if you think about it, because I've gone through this process several times. I'm still not even finished with my documents, which is scary because every time I talk to you guys, an elder attorney, it always brings up this anxiety in me, like, God, I got to finish it. And I just don't know how to finish it. But it's like, okay, well, who? Who do I appoint? And I mean, I know at this point who I'm going to appoint. It's my husband, of course, but sometimes people want to make other choices, or there's a divorce situation, and do you appoint one kid or the other kid, or who do you appoint? And I'm guessing, I'm not guessing, I know because I'm in a second marriage, it gets complicated. Yes?
No question about it. I think people do struggle with not only the idea that it's death and illness, but even once you make the decision, who do you appoint to act on your behalf? There's this notion that I want to treat all of my children equally, but that doesn't necessarily apply when you're talking about appointing agents under healthcare documents and financial durable power of attorney. You need to appoint the person that is most suited to carry out the job as a healthcare agent or as an agent under a power of attorney. And that may require you to be exclusive or exclusionary, perhaps is the better word, because one or more of your children may not be the most appropriate agents. But I don't struggle with that because I counsel clients all day long on those issues. I firmly believe you have to choose the best person for the job, and this is just not the place where you have to be concerned about treating your children equally. That really, to me, more applies with how you decide to distribute your assets when you die. If you love your children equally and you want to leave them all an equal share of your estate, then that's the place to treat them equally. Not if you have somebody that's not going to pull the plug when you're not in a good quality of life situation and you're in a coma and you're just going to be kept alive by machines.
Yeah.
Well, you don't want the person who struggles to make that decision to be your agent.
Right. The one who just can't
Say goodbye.
Tear
because they
themselves
feel
away
better
from
that
mommy.
you're at least here.
Right.
Even you're breathing still, even if it's artificially, and they can still see you.
That's a really good question, and we're just about out of time. But, okay, so what stands? Does the paper stand or does the person stand? So is it, okay, I say I don't want any life support, but the person says, no, don't unplug them yet because I'm not saying it's time.
Well, it really depends on, how the person carry out their duties. The agent is supposed to be a messenger. And the message that they're supposed to send is the wishes of the individual who's lying there and who is now non-communicative. Whether the agent actually does that is another question and probably the topic for another show.
Absolutely. Come back again. Okay, so thank you, Howie, for being here. Elder Law Associates, phone number, give me, is?
561-750-3850, or you can visit us on the web at www.elderlawassociates.com.
Great. Thank you so much.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you for being here.
Have a
Appreciate
great night.
it.
Thank you for tuning in to Different Like Me Culture with Alyse November. Join us every Monday at 6 p.m. Call 561-270-2280 for more information. And tune in again next week for more Different Like Me Culture.